Hello, my name is Micah Jakubowicz, and today I will be talking about the Tebow Adoption Aid. So raise your hand if you know who Tebow is. Okay, so some of you who may not know who he is, I will explain who he is later, somehow, if you don't know who he is. So Tebow's Adoption Aid is an orphan outreach program that provides adoption aid in 53 countries to families who want to adopt children who have special needs. And I'll explain a little bit more after I explain who exactly Tebow is, if you somehow don't know. So he played in college as a football player. He's well known as probably the greatest college football player to ever play. He played quarterback for the Florida Gators, won 2 national championships, 2 SEC championships, won the Heisman. Very decorated player. He's not really well known for playing in the NFL, although he did play a little bit for Denver Broncos and the Patriots. Right now, he's actually signed to the New York Mets as a baseball player, but he's mostly doing, as like a commentator and working for the SEC network, stuff like that. And I just wanted to share a little story of how God is working in his life. If you know anything about the John 3:16 story, that's what I'm going to be talking about. So, what Tebow is most famous for? Well, before that, if you think Steph Curry actually started the Philippians 4:13 verse, you're actually wrong, because Tebow actually started it. He was the first one to kind of, start writing Bible verses on his shoes, under his eyes, stuff like that. And he started wearing it all throughout college, and they started winning. They won their first SEC championship, and so it's kind of started to become like a superstition thing. Like if he didn't wear Philippians 4:13, they weren't going to win. And so his coach, Urban Meyer, not being a Christian, really actually believed this was like a superstition kind of thing. Didn't really believe it was true that God was actually really helping him and working through his life. He just was like, keep wearing it, you keep winning. So what actually happened, his second SEC championship, he actually went up to his coach and said, hey, I've really been praying, and I actually think God has been speaking to me to wear John 3:16 instead of Philippians 4:13. And of course his coach kind of freaked out, said, you can't do that, we're not going to win if you do that. But he ultimately gave the decision to Tebow. Tebow eventually accepted the decision to wear John 3:16, and they ended up winning the game. But something really cool happened there after the game was 94 million people Googled John 3:16. Now that's not all. Fast forward 3 years, 2012, he's playing for the Denver Broncos in the playoffs, and we're playing the Steelers in the playoffs. And it's exactly 3 years after that day when he chose to wear John 3:16 under his eyes. And he came out of the game after they won, and one of his managers was like, hey, do you realize what happened? And he's like, no, I don't. And he says, it's crazy. You had 316 passing yards. Your yards per completion was 31.6. Your yards per rushing was 3.16. The ratings for the night were 31.6, and the time of possession was 31.06. So essentially, every single stat that Tebow had that night had 316, or John 3:16. And that night, 91 million people Googled John 3:16, which I think is an awesome, thing to show how God is moving in Tebow's life. After the game, Tebow said, the God that we serve is a God of miracles. I just have to be willing to step out and say, here you go, God, I'm going to give you my fish and my loaves of bread, and watch what he does with it. So he got those loaves, and he actually made not only the adoption aid, but he calls it the Tebow Foundation. And I believe it's 7 foundations that he has, whether it's adoption or orphans. He also does the Make-A-Wish program with Tebow. But I'm just going to be talking about the adoption aid. And as I said, it helps